Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Unbiased America Live. We're here with our regular panel, or somewhat irregular panel, I should say. We have Matt Palumbo from Being Classically Liberal, Unbiased America, Being Liberal Logic, and any other page you've probably encountered on Facebook. Matt Palumbo probably has a hand in on it. He came out with a little video from We Are Capitalists this week, so he's there too. Is there anywhere you're not, Matt?
No. Currently,
okay,
no.
Cool. You are omnipotent, I see.
Every Facebook page on Facebook I played a role in creating.
All right. And our other panelist, the only person I know who's more annoying than Matt Palumbo, Kevin Ryan. Uncle Kevin, we call him. He's the founder of Unbiased America, which is the parent of the show. It is the illegitimate parent, or is it the illegitimate child? This is the illegitimate child of Unbiased America, which is the parent. But I would say grandparent because of Kevin's advanced age.
He's the illegitimate parent. I'm the illegitimate child of Vice.
Yeah, you are the illegitimate 9-year-old. All right.
13.
We have a special guest with us tonight from the Connecticut Citizens Defense League, an advocacy group for the Second Amendment in Connecticut. Kevin Julian Borgness. Did I say that right?
Julian Borgness, you're close.
Julian Borgness. This thing is it seems very medieval to me. Julian Borgness. I'm trying to get that straight. But thanks for coming on. I appreciate your time.
Yeah, no problem.
So what got you into defending the Second Amendment, first of all, and what made you want to, was there a problem in Connecticut? Is that what led to your advocacy?
So I started right before I turned 21. I started looking at the laws because I was trying to find something I could do that I wasn't able to do before. So guns was the major issue for me. And I started realizing even before I turned 21 that the laws in Connecticut were pretty messed up.
Well, let me stop you there. Why?
Yeah.
Why was guns the issue for you?
I was looking for a hobby, and I wasn't into gambling, and I didn't care about drinking. So guns became the issue.
Okay. So you like to shoot shooting ranges, and so on.
Say that again.
You like to just shoot for recreation, or did you like to hunt, shoot for recreation, or both?
I had never had any exposure to guns really growing up, except for BB gun and Boy Scouts, and that's about it.
Oh, okay. So it's like kind of like a thing you just like. Got it. So then from there, you looked at the gun laws because you were concerned that they were too onerous, or it was too difficult for you personally to get a gun?
They didn't make a whole lot of sense to me, especially looking at a lot of the statistics and seeing how they were being overblown. So a lot of the problems that people who were against guns were thinking are supported by the evidence really weren't. And the laws that the legislators created to address those problems, quote unquote. What
problems were they addressing specifically? Are you saying the laws were too onerous insofar as it relates to gun deaths, in that respect, or was it just you felt like government was being just improperly, out of nowhere, harsh on gun owners?
Well, it's definitely that. So Connecticut's a blue state, and we have had, even before the '94 federal ban on assault weapons, we had our own ban, I think October of '93, that has existed and was recently enhanced in 2013. And there was no evidence supporting a need for it, really. And even the federal evidence, the statistics came out after the federal ban showed that there wasn't really any changes in homicides as a result of that.
Okay. Now, Connecticut has a unique position. I'm sorry, Kevin, do you have a headset? I think I hear there's a lot of feedback.
I can try it again, but
there's no sound? Okay.
Yeah.
Connecticut has a unique position because of obviously Sandy Hook. Sandy Hook was a problem, high emotional issue. Did that force the Connecticut legislature to clamp down on guns?
So, like I said, we already had a state assault weapons ban that banned AR-15s, AK-47s with a grandfather clause. So what they did in 2013 was they added a quote-unquote large capacity magazine ban So we could no longer own anything larger than a magazine holding larger than 10 rounds. If you already had one, you had to declare it with the state, which was a whole process. And a similar process for anyone who had one of the quote-unquote banned guns, the handguns that are also included in the ban.
Okay. So now, didn't that, what was I forgot the kid's name. Adam something Kook Loon Job. I don't remember his name. But didn't he use one of his mother's assault weapons?
Yeah, he actually killed his mother to get access to her guns. She had, or he ended up taking a handgun, an AR-15, and a shotgun. I think it was a Saiga. And the shotgun never left his trunk.
Her assault weapon was already grandfathered in?
Yes. So you could still technically buy a post-ban AR-15 in Connecticut as long as it didn't have fancy features.
Okay.
Yeah, there was a limit on the number of features you could have. So they clamped on that. You can't buy those anymore.
Okay.
Although you can buy a 22 version and non-semi-automatic versions of it as well.
So was there a single solitary law that the Connecticut legislature could enact that would have stopped something like Sandy Hook happening in Connecticut?
I very much doubt anything could have been done, and what they did do wouldn't have stopped them anyway because the guns were already in the state.
Right. So do you think that a lot of these are just feel-good laws that really don't do anything?
Absolutely. We've got plenty of laws on the books now. We don't need more.
Okay.
And the way the process they use to pass the emergency certification that they rammed through all of the new gun laws under left a lot to be desired with the process, and the loopholes of sorts were left open. For example, one of the things they would hope to do was to not be able to not to change what already was there, just make more stuff. But as a result of the law, something that was before the 2013 ban went into effect, you can now add any of the fancy features you had before, even if it was a quote-unquote pre-ban 1994.
Okay. Kevin came out with a really good piece today on Unbiased America Live, or on Unbiased America, and we'll get to that in a second. But what's the grassroots support like for the Connecticut Citizens Defense League in Connecticut?
It's been phenomenal. We started in 2009. There was, I think, a dinner in a Hops restaurant in Newington. There was about probably 20 people. Only about half of those stuck around, and we've grown it up to 18,000.
Wow, that's a big. That's pretty good. Do you get any blowback? Does your organization get any blowback from the left, specifically in Connecticut, or any national entities?
Specifically against gun violence that's been around for about just as long as another group, Connecticut Coalition of Sportsmen, has been around. So the Bob Crook of Connecticut Coalition of Sportsmen has been fighting for hunters' rights for 30 years, and on the other side, Connecticut Against Gun Violence has been fighting for just about as long against guns.
Okay. Has anybody been? Has there any been civil disobedience with regard to the laws there?
Well, if you look at the numbers, the number of registered assault weapons that were required after the new law went into effect is significantly less than the estimated number of firearms and covering the law and large capacity magazines.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a lot of people who didn't register, and if specifically you look at the New York law, because they had a very similar thing. The state released the required to, I think.
Exactly.
By a judge.
And that gets into Kevin's piece, and I'll get to Kevin here. Can anybody else hear like something chatter in the background? Can you hear that, Kevin?
I think it's just an echo.
Yeah, I don't think it's too bad.
Okay.
I think if the Kevin 2 mutes his mic, I don't think we'll hear it.
Okay.
I think.
Okay. Kevin, your piece today, excellent piece. It's really hard to compliment you. It's tough. But that piece you came out with was pretty good. I mean, I've seen a lot better, but that was a good one. It was about the SAFE Act in New York, and essentially civil disobedience. I mean, people within the states or commonwealths are rebelling against these laws that are enacted by the legislature. I don't know, and I mean, here's New York as a far left state, and these people are really rebelling. I mean, certainly it's probably a minority of people that aren't registering their minority insofar as it relates to the broader body politic. But there's quite a few people that are rebelling, right, Kevin? Specifically in New York.
Yeah, and this is what Kevin was referring to earlier, was that, well, there's two acts. The one in Connecticut, they released the numbers a while ago, and the estimate was something like between 100,000 and 400,000 assault weapons applied to the new definition of assault weapon. The estimate was that there's up to 400,000 of these weapons in Connecticut. So when the law went into effect, people had a year to register their weapons. They've since relaxed it a little bit. Maybe Kevin can address that more. But in that time, only about 50,000 people actually went and registered their firearms. And this was seen as basically civil disobedience. And I can actually give you a quote, too. One of our state legislators said that a constituent made the analogy to prohibition. And he asked the guy, "Are you talking about civil obedience?" And the guy said yes. And we've had some other people come in front of some of the Connecticut legislature hearings and so forth, and basically stand up for gun rights. And now, like Kevin also said, we had the numbers come out on New York, which I guess there was a court order that they had to release how many people registered in New York State. And New York is obviously a much larger state than Connecticut, so it was expected to have significantly more assault weapons that would have been registered, but they actually had less people register than in Connecticut. You had estimates of up to a million, at least in the 100,000s, but maybe up to a million assault weapons were supposed to be registered, and only 40,000 plus people registered. And people are shaking their heads and just basically saying it's basically a boycott. It's civil disobedience. People don't like the law, so they're just not applying. They're not abiding by it.
Do you think the legislature is making these laws contrary to the will of the people in those states with those respective body politics? Or do you think there's a majority of liberals there that want to see guns? Obviously, they don't like guns. They probably most likely their ends is they want to see them banned. Do you think that this is the civil disobedience by a minority, or do you think it's civil disobedience by a majority, if that makes sense?
Well, I think it's by the minority, because if you look at the actual polls, I might get this backwards, but New York, I believe, was something like 60-40 or 70-30 in favor of the law, the SAFE law in New York. Connecticut was closer, if I recall. I might not have those. I might have those numbers backwards. But the majority did support the law. So,
okay.
But the majority of the people that support the law are not firearm owners in most circumstances.
Right.
So the people that the law applies to are the ones that are boycotting the law. So, yeah.
Okay. Just back to Kevin, the other Kevin here for a second. Did they relax that time frame in Connecticut that you know of?
The time frame, no. They did relax the laws slightly in that a first offense being caught, does not immediately make you a felon. How it was written originally, I think they lowered it to a misdemeanor for an assault weapon and some sort of infraction for not declaring your standard capacity magazines.
I mean, what does the local police enforcement or local law enforcement think about? Are they out there actively enforcing these laws? I mean, what steps can they really take? What are they going to go through each person's house and check their arsenal?
We've for a long time we've had a registration of sorts where when you buy a gun from a dealer or a handgun from a private party, you had to fill out a form in quadruplicate kit and hand it out to a bunch of different people, state, the local police, and the buyer and seller each needed a copy. They expanded that to be all firearms now, both in retail and private party sales.
Even handguns?
So they had some record, but they didn't have a record about everything, especially the ARs, because they were long guns. They did not qualify for being required to be reported or any transfer. So they have no idea where they are, really. And we've always advocated that, well, they may come after you if something happens in your house, like have either police or EMTs come to your house for some issue, just a domestic dispute, anything like that. They'll probably look at your guns and take whatever is unregistered and charge you.
Yeah.
They would be actually coming door to door, storming gun owners' houses.
Right. Okay. Now, Maddie, off the top of your head, we know the gun ban. I believe it was the assault weapon ban. It was the federal ban. Was what 1994 to 2004, if my memory serves me correctly. Am I right?
I don't know the exact time frame. It sounds about right, though.
Yeah, I think Bush let it expire in Bush let it expire in 2004. There was this outrage. Have the statistics off the top of your head? I don't think it did anything. I think Kevin brought this up earlier. I don't think it did anything.
I don't know the exact figures. I don't know the exact figures, but actually, what's interesting is I remember on Dan Feinstein's website, she had like a section where she had studies that were supposedly pro-gun control, and one claimed that the assault weapons ban reduced assault weapon fatalities by 6%. And then I actually looked at the study, and after the quote where it says that, it says, "But we cannot rule out that this may have happened by random chance and not the ban." So. Yeah, so this very study she was citing that claimed it reduced firearm homicides had a disclaimer that it actually probably didn't.
Right.
So yeah, there's no evidence that it worked at all.
In your opinion, and you've done a lot of research on this, I think you put gun stats in both The Conscience of a Young Conservative and in Defense of Classical Liberalism, if my memory serves me correctly.
I think just the first one, but
was it just the first one? I
think so. Yeah.
It's been a while. If you're off your memory, do these gun bans keep? If somebody wants to get an assault weapon, irrespective of the laws, can't they do so already?
Yeah, and I mean, a lot of like the analysis that we do is cost benefit. It's do guns save more lives than they cost? But we have to realize that even if, let's say, the cost benefit analysis is on our side and guns do commit more homicides than lives they say, it doesn't necessarily mean that gun control would actually work in our current landscape, because there's 300 million guns for the government to confiscate and get rid of. The criminals are not going to get rid of them. So all you're doing is keeping the people who have guns are going to misuse them no matter what. They get to keep them. The people who maybe some will defend themselves at a lower rate than we would want in our cost-benefit scenario, but they're going to have no guns at all. So you could even have more gun homicides following a gun ban, even in a nation where guns are killing more people than they're saving. If that makes any sense to you.
Yes, and let me ask you a follow-up question, and you kind of brought this up. How can you keep stats? We know that there's a lot of guns in the country. How can you keep stats on deaths that are prevented because somebody has a gun? If somebody's attacking me in an alley and they're coming at me and I pull out a gun and they run, that's crime.
Yeah, exactly.
So are there estimates?
Yeah, I mean, I think like justifiable homicides, it's like 300 by civilians a year, and people look at that and say it's very low, but you have to realize that it's the majority of cases. Someone just brandishes the weapon and the person flees, and even if they shoot them, they might not die. So there's a lot of incidents that are prevented that aren't captured by the official statistics.
What's the book, Maddie? That I forget. I think the author's last name is Lott. It's
More Guns, Less Crime.
Yeah, he tried to quantify, or at least he had some numbers there that quantified how many people were saved versus how many people were killed or used it criminally. And was it something like 7 to 1 or 3 to 1 or something?
I can't remember the ratio. I remember he argues for, I think, 2.5 million self-defensive uses per year.
Yeah.
The lowest I've seen, and I think it's federal data, is something like 700,000. So now that's just self-defense. It doesn't mean like. Obviously, it could have been self-defense from a robbery or a mugging where maybe you won't even get assaulted or killed, but still, it's still preventing a crime of some sort.
Okay, there's also a book. I can't remember what her name was. She wrote it. She was it's a gal from England, and she did a study on crime rates in England before and after the weapons ban, and she compared them to the United States. I can't remember what it was. Saul had it as required readings on his list.
Was it in Intellectuals in Society?
He uses her. He references her book, and I can't find the book now. I have it written down. I can't find it. But I read that book a while ago. It was also an excellent book delineating how, gun bans don't prevent gun deaths. I think it just as if anything, and Kevin could probably attest to this, all it does is restrict law-abiding citizens and gives the criminals an advantage. I just don't see how some people can't think that. Is there literally, Kevin, is there literally a belief that guns themselves kill people?
Well, that's what it boils down to. There's a lot. Oh, I'm sorry. You're talking to which Kevin? Are you
Yeah,
talking
I'm sorry. We'll go with. I'll call him Kevin H. Kevin H. Sorry. Do you think it's a belief that people literally think that guns are to blame as opposed to the person?
I think there's a very small minority that think that guns actually are the cause of the crime. I think most people who are against guns think it's the fact that guns exist in our society makes it easier to commit crimes and more heinous crimes. And going to your other point about criminals, getting guns, there was just a study out of, I think, Chicago that said that basically shows that criminals in Chicago, they don't get the guns at gun stores or gun shows. They don't do it legally. They go on the street and it's a black market. Whenever you ban something, there's a black market for it. So that's where they go.
Okay, well, for a second here, I'm going to play devil's advocate. Now I'm going to be a liberal, and I'm going to defend government intrusion on gun rights because I think I can do it far better than the left can. Kevin H., I'm going to start with you. You just brought up Chicago. Isn't the problem that it's easier to get guns in other states? I can easily get a gun in another state and bring it into Chicago rather than the restrictive gun laws on the south side of Chicago. Isn't that true?
I think it's not keeping the guns out of the hands of the bad people so much, because we're already trying to do that, and it's clearly not working. I think what we need to do is put guns in the hands of the right people. Those are the law-abiding citizens who want to take their own personal responsibility and protect themselves.
Okay,
so if it's harder for them to do it, you're making it easier for them to become victims.
Right, but at the same time, if we make it easier for everybody, wouldn't it be easier for criminals to get them too?
It's already easy for them.
Okay, well, I don't feel like it is. My feelings are legitimate. I also think that the Confederate flag
I'm sorry you feel that.
mixed with a gun will take lives. I'm going to go to Kevin. Don't you think that limiting, or government limiting, or imposing steep costs on gun owners would limit the amount of guns? Let's say that imposing costs on people carrying them in the street, these conceal and carry things. I mean, somebody could snap at any given time, right? I mean, they could pull their gun out in a bar. Maybe perhaps they're in a bar. They pull their gun out and start shooting. I mean, look what happened in Arizona with this biker gang shooting. I mean, there's externalities, right? They can hit somebody else. Why are they allowed to have a gun?
Criminals can get their hands on anything. They can make a bomb if they want. I mean, literally.
Why are criminals so proficient at everything? I mean, they're criminals.
Because they're not subjected to the laws that the law-abiding are subjected to. They can ignore every law and do whatever they want. So I mean, that's something that goes over, I think, most policymakers' heads, is that they're not making policies for criminals. They're making them for the law-abiding, and it's always just gonna restrain restrain those who are not criminals from defending themselves.
So let's say let's say that the government banned guns. How do you know that the criminals are going to have guns? I mean, what proof do you have? I mean, wouldn't you say we'd have a safer society? I don't know are you speaking completely a priori, saying, well, criminals will get guns anyway? How do we know?
Well, first of all, it's not. I did a post a while back that got a lot of views and was kind of controversial, because what I did is I went after this whole notion that America has the worst gun violence in the world. And then people said, we have to restrict guns. Look in Europe, they have much less gun violence. In Japan, there's almost no gun violence. And I said, well, hold on a second. Isn't that a trick, a statistical trick, to say, hold on, let's only look at gun violence? Well, of course America has a lot of gun violence because we have a lot of guns. But does that mean we have a lot of violence? Okay? If you look at every country in the entire world, and you for each country you show the murder rate, and then next to it you show the availability of firearms per capita, or however it's measured, you're going to find the exact opposite trend as what most people would believe. The countries with more availability of weapons have fewer homicides, have lower homicide rates. The countries with fewer availability of weapons have higher homicide rates. Now, am I saying that it's the guns that are keeping down our homicide rates? No, I'm not. What this is showing us is that there are other reasons for violence. There's other reasons for murders. and people are wrongly focusing on the existence of a weapon as somehow being responsible for violence. It's not. Violence is a cultural issue. Some people believe it has to do with economics,
stop you
a
there.
socio-economic issue.
Wasn't there peace, love, and harmony before the advent of the firearm? I mean,
Yeah.
I don't know why this is funny to you, okay?
It's funny because in the 1600s, the murder rate was something like 100 times higher than it is today.
People all
And there
died
was
by
no
natural
fire.
causes then. They all died from natural causes.
Yeah, right. Well, you suck as a devil's advocate, buddy. I got to call you
And
out,
will
man.
argue with me next.
Yeah, I'm going to you next, Matt. We have a culture of guns here. It prevails in our culture. It's in our DNA. People love guns. It's this America, America, America. It's nonsense. It's a throwback attitude, and people think it's okay to go out guns blazing. I don't know. I mean, I don't. I think there's just it's a safer society with when guns are disallowed as opposed to guns being allowed. I don't really care what the statistics say. That just makes more logical sense.
I think instead of teaching people to support gun control, we should just teach people not to kill.
Yeah, well, guns help them kill. Guns. I mean, if somebody wants to kill, it's going to be harder without a gun. You know, they have to get a knife. They have to creep up on them. They got to be a ninja. See, but with a gun, they can do it from a distance. You know, right now, if I had a gun, I could hang it out the window and just start blowing off rounds. What's to stop me from doing that? I mean, that's a dangerous thing to give the individual this much freedom.
Well, nothing's stopping you from doing that.
Oh, I'm sorry. Hold on, Maddie, and then I'll get to Kevin. Kevin H. Go ahead, Maddie.
No, Kevin, it's fine if you want to go first, Kevin.
No, Maddie, you go, then he goes.
I already lost my train of thought. Don't worry about it.
I mean, isn't it dangerous to give the individual that much liberty and arm them? I mean, how do we know what they're going to do? What about these mental health cases? We got these guys, they go a little kooky, and they're getting the guns in legal ways.
Well, luckily I know this guy named Kevin Ryan, and he pointed out that if you actually look at the correlation between availability of firearms and overall homicides, there's an inverse correlation.
I mean, I haven't really looked at any of these studies to refute the numbers. Maybe they're skewed. Who's running the studies? It's probably Heritage or Cato.
Well, not only do the studies say this, I feel like this is the way things are as well.
Yeah, but see, your reality isn't my reality, and my reality is more correct than your reality because I'm a postmodernist, and you adhere to like the scientific method, and I don't care about the scientific method. Everything's a construct. Hence why capitalism's bad too, and you're an idiot. All right, Kevin H.
Good point.
I mean, advocating to have more guns in everyone's hands. These people maybe don't know how to use guns. Maybe they don't know how to use them safely. Maybe a guy sitting in his house cleaning his weapon blows a hole through the wall and kills his kid in the next room. There are accidents that happen with these things too. Shouldn't we protect people from accidents?
You know, accidents with firearms are exceedingly rare, and they've only been going down. The NRA, for instance, has been pushing for decades the An Eagle program, which teaches kids gun safety. Namely, if you see a gun, walk away and go tell an adult.
Okay, so you're saying that because it's incredibly rare. What is the point at which gun advocates, such as yourselves, you warmongering animals, what point is it bad enough for you to say, hey, we have to get more common sense gun laws? Because if I say common sense gun laws, that actually carries a meaning. It's just like saying a living wage, fairness, diversity, things like that. So common sense gun laws, aka banning them. Yeah. How do you know that we haven't had ever a gun ban? How do you know it won't work? We need to try it.
We know it won't work because we've seen it not work since 1934 when we instituted our first anti-gun legislation. We've seen in the UK where their violent crime rate, after adjusting for statistics, is twice as much as ours.
All right, you guys keep throwing numbers and empirical evidence at me here, and it's not about that. Okay, this is about an overall consensus and discourse. And the people on the left, they have a right too. They're worried. I don't want some right-wing loon job to shoot me. I'm a big-time leftist, and I'm fear Donald Trump specifically is going to come into my home and blow my brains out. And you guys here are arming them. And moreover, look, you don't even hunt, Kevin H. You're not a hunter. What do you need a weapon for? I don't understand.
Well, first of all, the Second Amendment's not about hunting. It's about defense. Defense of yourself, defense of the state.
So you think that the state's just going to all of a sudden arm up and come after you?
No, I don't. But it doesn't mean they won't.
Okay. All right, fine. Give me your money first, and then I'm going to come after you. Kevin, I mean, getting back to the gist of this here, and looking at constitutional law, do you think if we were if we were looking at constitutional originalism, it would mean that the Constitution itself only restricts the federal government, and it leaves these laws up to the states? I mean, the founders could never ever fathom any state or body politic disallowing them to be armed. I mean, the states at the time wouldn't even conceive of that. Okay, how far have I mean, like I asked Kevin, and Kevin said the Second Amendment isn't about hunting; it's about my right to defend myself from my government. I think people today lack the perspective that they are in fact a sovereign citizen, that they are sovereign over the Constitution, over the federal government, and they are in fact sovereign over their legislatures. How did we lose this? Is this again? We go back to you as our media personality. I see the left in the media, and they're in control of our institutions, and they really are controlling a lot of these thought processes. But for some reason, people at the grassroots level will not let this happen. How is that? How is that possible to you? I mean, they control the schools, the media, most of any other institution that we have, and people are still really, really against this. Do you think that more people than I let on understand that it's really for their protection from their government?
No, I don't. I think in general, people who are fearful of gun violence are fearful of guns, and I think that it's something that has become, translated into a legislative agenda that has basically, over time, worn away a lot of our rights. I mean, there's three types of states. There's there's may permit, there's shall permit, or issue. I'm sorry, may issue, shall issue. And I forget the third one, but you look at places like Boston, you cannot get a fire. It's essentially been outlawed for you to have a firearm in Boston, and yet they're doing this supposedly legally because they're a may issue state, not a shall issue state, which means they don't have to give you a firearm. They ask you if you have a good cause to have a firearm, and you know what? They never conclude that you do have a good cause to have a firearm. So essentially, you've got a small group of people. In some cases, there are law enforcement precincts that are basically outlawing weapons in their jurisdiction by simply not allowing permits.
I find that fascinating. That like what you said, they have to come up with a cause for you to have a weapon. The main entity that the framers wanted, or the very thing that the framers wanted to protect, was that you have a weapon to protect you from the government. That was the purpose of it. And now the main arbiter of if or not you can have a weapon and its purpose is in fact the government. How have we gone so far astray? And I mean, that's in Massachusetts. I mean, Massachusetts was the breadbasket of the Liberty movement. I just find it appalling that we've moved this far left.
It's mostly in the cities, because if you go outside the cities, you get, and the third type is unrestricted. I just remembered. It's mostly in the cities, but there are a lot of cities where you just can't get a permit to have a weapon, but most people in the cities are liberal, and they're against firearms, and so that's why you're not going to get a lot of people pushing back against this stuff.
Right. So let's say New York City. It's very hard. It's very hard to get a gun there. They had a policy of stop and frisk, but everybody was against that. I mean, you had a lot of people on the left who were against stop and frisk, but I thought you weren't supposed to have a gun anyway. I'm lost. What do you need to stop and frisk for? Why are there still gun violence in the cities if these things have already banned guns? Don't they see that it's a failure in that city in and of itself? I don't see a lot of people in rural cities or rural towns dying from these things where the gun laws are more lax. Yes, you can look at it's a matter of population and so on, but I'm lost as to that logic. In the south side of Chicago, it's just horrible what goes on over there. So Kevin, in Connecticut, what's your main hub in Connecticcut? What's the biggest city there?
In Connecticut.
I mean, Kevin H.
Hartford's the big city.
And are the gun laws in the city there more restrictive than statewide?
So Connecticut doesn't really have local ordinances that address guns. We're pretty much whatever the state law says is what it is. We actually in the past had a couple of local ordinances in the town that excuse me, that would prevent concealed carry within the town, but didn't prevent open carry, and we had those corrected.
Mm-hmm.
But generally, it's based on state law. So you apply to the town to get the permit. The police chief eventually signs off on it. It's supposed to be in 8 weeks, but it doesn't always happen that way, especially in cities. And then you get your permit.
What is the state, city, or locality that has the most lax gun laws in the country? Do you know that? Kevin H?
Sorry, you cut off. Can you repeat that?
Yeah. What is the state, city, or locality, any locality that has the most lax gun laws in the country? Do you know?
I don't know, but I saw something recently that Plano, Texas has the most guns per capita.
Oh, is the most? I mean, I think Texas had. Kevin, do you know, or Maddie, do you know? I think Texas didn't even have a conceal and carry permit for a little while. I think they just got one. Correct me if I'm wrong.
They just got open carry. They had a concealed carry permit for a long time, but they were restricted from open carry.
Oh, okay, okay.
There are a few states that are completely unrestricted. Basically, anybody can get a firearm that they want. I'm just reading this now.
Are there background checks? The federal government has.
Yes.
The federal law, they have background checks,
right?
Alaska,
Arizona, Arkansas, Kansas, and Vermont are fully unrestricted, and they're allowed those who anybody who's not prohibited from owning a firearm can receive a firearm in those states. And it's interesting because Bernie Sanders is from obviously Vermont, and he's been getting a bit of criticism from others on his left that are calling him too loose or too lax on gun control. And he has not been completely against certain elements of gun legislation. So he still gets an F from the NRA. So
yeah, he does, huh?
Yeah.
Still gets an F from them? Okay. Because, I mean, yeah, in Vermont there, I don't think he's ever really, I think he said, oh, I support guns for hunting. I think that's him trying to toe the line there. But, I mean, that's really, Vermont that elected a socialist senator has unrestricted gun laws. I mean, that is shocking to me. This means that there's a lot of people on the left, the far left, that want to retain their gun rights, so to speak. Would that be an incorrect conclusion to make?
No, they're not. That's absolutely, and Kevin H. can probably attest to this too. That in some very liberal states, there's a very healthy gun rights movement, and it's one of those things that divides a lot of people, especially on the left. The right is mostly in favor of the Second Amendment, but the left is divided, and it's an issue that if you look back at some of the elections where they got clobbered, a lot of people said it was because of their stance on gun control and how their own base came up against them and said, you better not take away our guns. So
right, huh? All that stuff is very interesting to me. How I mean, I don't think it's really entirely a partisan issue. Yes, the Democrat Party is largely the party of gun control, but I think the grassroots of the Democrat Party really don't want more restrictive or onerous gun laws when it comes to their own guns. I think perhaps part of the problem is some of these Democrats live in areas where they know that it's necessary to have a weapon in order to protect themselves from someone else. I don't know. I guess you can come up with a myriad theories. But Kevin H., what do you see as the largest threat, not just in Connecticut, but in the country as a whole to gun rights? Do you see it as a partisan thing? Are there lobbyist groups that you see as a threat? Are there lobbyist groups specifically in Connecticut that you see as a threat?
I don't know if the lobbyist groups are the only threat out there, because we've got lobbyist groups too that are fighting against them. I think the biggest problem is the 24-hour news cycle that feels it necessary to push every little tiny piece of news in your face nationally, where we wouldn't have had that 20 years ago.
So it's a matter of meta-narratives to a degree. I mean, I think Kevin Ryan did a couple pieces on this on Unbiased America, where he said, the media coverage has gone up dramatically, while gun deaths has dropped dramatically. Is that correct, Kevin Ryan?
Yeah, in fact, if they did a bunch of polls asking people how gun violence has changed since the 90s, and something like 70% of people thought that gun violence had gone up. when in fact gun violence has gone down dramatically in that time. But then if you compare that to the amount of coverage, like Kevin says, in the press, the amount of coverage has skyrocketed. So you're seeing less violence but more coverage. And it's part of an agenda that I think a lot of people on the left have, that are anti-gun.
But
They're
don't you
pushing
think
their agenda.
don't you think it's fascinating though that it's not working? I mean, you'd think when they could, like I said earlier, they control all these things, they control the narrative, and people aren't buying it. You know what I mean? At this rate, it's amazing to me that the Democrats don't control everything, all the federal bureaucracies, the entire federal government, state governments. I mean, the Democrats are literally getting crushed at the grassroots level, at the local levels. They're getting destroyed. I think I don't know if you see a counter movement to this stuff over the past, after we've seen the past 8 years or the past 6 or 7 years of Barack Obama, and really the divisions he's really caused with a lot of these gun deaths. You know what I mean? It's like every time somebody dies with a gun, we gotta. I mean, what was it? The gal that got shot, by that reporter. What was the first thing he said after that?
Oh yeah.
Right?
And the very first thing, you had politicians coming out and saying it's time to get rid of handguns. I mean, to start limiting them even more. I mean, but Kevin can attest to it. He's a part of the backlash of people who have come out and said, you know what? My parents had access to firearms, and it's part of our American heritage, and so there's a definite backlash, and I think it has essentially won the battle, if not the war. I think it's starting to win the battles.
Maddie, on gun stats, have you done any empirical work within the United States in and of itself? Can you hear me, Matt? Are you there? I don't think he's there still. Okay, I'm going to go back to Kevin H. I was going to ask Matt if he did any stats on which cities, in relation to their gun laws, are the most violent. And correct me if I'm wrong, Kevin H., but isn't it that most of these cities with the strictest gun laws are in fact the most violent?
I would say, yeah. There's a good video. I think it's called "The Firewall" that I just watched. That goes over the list of the top homicide cities, and Detroit tops the list. And surprisingly, though, Boston and Chicago have a lot of violence. They weren't quite in the top 5 or so, but they're still up there. But yeah, the places where guns are most restrictive are the most violent, and I don't know which came first, or I would suspect strongly that the violence happened first, and because of that, they clamped down, and it's just gotten worse. It hasn't gotten better. While the rest of the country has had 20 years of a decrease in violent crime, we see the cities are still a problem.
So at the local level in Chicago, they see that these laws aren't working. This happens daily. People are dying there. They know for a fact that the gun laws are not reducing deaths, that there's a really huge problem there. What's the likelihood of these local leaders, the far left local leaders, to change the laws and to say, hey, look, why don't we relax these gun laws and see if there's any drop in homicides? Why wouldn't they, given the violence and the deaths, why would they not change this? I do not understand that. Perhaps you have an answer.
I think they're doubling down on what's easiest. They're not looking at the real causes of problems, poverty, the lack of education. If you improve people's access to education, their stature in life, then there's less crime, and we've seen those stats, played out in history.
Right. I just don't know if it's just they're so wedded to an ideological vision that it's like, oh, we're more concerned with just what it looks like and what it feels like to ban gun. We feel really great, like we've done something here, and now we've washed our hands of it. There's nothing else that we can do. Rather than saying, hey, why don't we just lessen the gun laws here, let law-abiding people buy guns and see if the crime drops at all. I don't know. It's just infuriating, really. Kevin, do you see that realistically happening in any of these cities, them finally saying, and look, most of these cities, the most violent cities with the most crime and the most gun violence are run by the left. I mean, they are leftist-controlled cities. Not only are the gun laws a problem, but a lot of the economic laws they have instituted in these cities, they've harmed people. The public school system's a complete failure. People are coming out of school without the skills they need. Minimum wage is, minimum wage, and also controlling the supply of housing and jacking up housing prices is also killing people too. When do you see there ever being a change that they finally say, hey, this isn't working?
No.
Okay. Why?
I don't. I mean, because I think, like Kevin said, it's easier. I think that these are politicians who are making these laws, and they have to get elected. And there's just a segment of society that is afraid of firearms. I mean, I can look at my own family. I come from a somewhat conservative family, actually a very conservative family, but not one that ever had really any firearms. And they were mostly in favor of gun control.
Do you think a part of it is not that they're afraid of firearms, they're actually afraid of people? That they don't that when it comes down to it, not that they consciously think about it, but they're really afraid of liberty, of freedom, of other people being free.
That is the problem, is that they don't consciously think of it. They don't think that a law is not going to stop anyone. They don't think, they think on the surface, and to them a law prohibiting something actually prohibits something, and it doesn't. And for those of us who actually look at the statistics and the figures, that takes a lot of time to actually analyze the effect of these policies.
Right.
Most people don't have that time, so they just think on the surface. They're playing a game of checkers, whereas there's very few people actually playing chess who are looking at the in-depth, effects of these policies.
Right.
And because of that, you're always going to have a large number of people, in my opinion, who just aren't part of the gun culture or don't understand firearms and are afraid of them and afraid of people having access to them.
It's an interesting point. Matt, are you there?
Yeah, I'm sorry. My computer's graphics card for some reason crashes it every here and there, and it for some reason happened twice in a row. But yeah, I'm back.
No one knows what a graphics card is, Matt. Here, so
even I don't. But I googled the problem I keep getting, and someone on Google said that's what it has to do with. So, yeah.
I wanted to ask you because you get into the wonky statistics here.
Yeah.
And both Kevins brought up an interesting point. Don't you see it as far easier to repeat anti-gun slogans and mantras for an individual to think of it on the surface and just parrot what you hear on television or what you hear in the main, like, oh yeah, I don't want to think about it. Guns are bad. Ban guns. Gun problem solved. As opposed to the conservative or the libertarian coming up with arguments and statistics to say that the statistics show that this isn't an increase, and we have a much harder time disseminating the actual truth, the facts. Do you see that as a problem?
Well, yeah. I mean, it's a lot easier to toss up, one or two numbers than actually analyze trends and data. I mean, like Piers Morgan used to always say, in the UK we have very strong gun control and 30 gun murders a year. In the US, their laws are very lax and you have 10,000. But he's not looking at the trends in the UK. They've always had less gun homicides than us, no matter what their gun policy was.
Right. So part of it has to do with culture, correct?
Exactly. Yeah. Like if you look in the UK, for instance, like I think it was in one of Thomas Sowell's book in 1890, they had a population of 30 million people and 4 gun murders. Yeah. So I mean, they've never had a problem with guns.
That was intellectuals in society, by the way.
Yeah, and yet once they banned guns, they actually saw those numbers increase, and yet people still look at the gap as if that proves anything, but it doesn't give you the full picture.
Right. Kevin, I'm sure you come into Kevin H. I'm sorry. I'm sure you come into contact with local leaders, perhaps people in the Connecticut legislature. What is your opinion on? Do you think they know that it's bad to have? I mean, insofar as it relates to gun deaths and gun violence, that it's a net negative to have more gun control, and that they just don't care, and that they're just going to repeat mantras that other people hear in order to enact gun laws because they're like, well, this gives me more power in some sense. I get more votes if I do this. Do you think that goes on?
I think it goes on everywhere. What we tried to do in the last election was to really try to get some pro-gun people in office, and I think we did a pretty decent job. We endorsed I think 65 candidates in the Senate, and we ended up getting 46 of those in. Most of those were already incumbents, but we ended up flipping 6 yes votes from to further ban assault weapons from the last election, and got another candidate that was more pro-gun than who was in there before. So, for a fledgling organization, I think we did pretty good. And we're always pushing for more. We want more pro-gun Democrats. We want more pro-gun Republicans. And we just need to work to build up that support in the legislature. Because we don't even need to push anything positive in. We just need to stop the bad stuff.
Right. Who do you view in the 2016 presidential race, on the Democrat and Republican side? Who do you view as the most pro-gun?
It's neat. On the Democrat side, let's say Jim Webb is supposed to be pretty decent on guns, and on the Republican side, I personally like Rand Paul. Okay. Ron Paul was better.
Would you consider yourself more of a libertarian?
Yes, I would.
Kevin Ryan, I want to ask you the same question. In the 2016 GOP and Democrat field, who do you see as the most pro-gun?
It is Rand Paul. I mean, but on the left, you're not going to find too much, so it's almost not even worth mentioning. But there are some pretty good pro-gun candidates on the right, but I think a lot of people play the middle ground. I don't think you get a lot of people toting the gun and saying, "Pry it from my cold dead hands," as much as you used to.
Really?
But at the same time, you also have this grassroots movement that is keeping people in office. The NRA, of course, is a huge organization in terms of its influence, but this grassroots movement is really influencing how politicians vote. I mean, like Kevin said, they got 46 or so people out of the ones they endorsed. And I do know this was a tough time for Connecticut because we're in a post-Sandy Hook environment. So the fact that we're still getting, people elected and people who are pro-gun or at least not as anti-gun as they used to be, that's a pretty good testament to what is happening in the country as a whole, I think.
Interesting. Now I want to go back to Kevin H. for a second and just let you know that we do a winners and losers segment at the end of the show. I forgot to tell you this before the show. We just do winners and losers of the week. You pick whoever you want. It can be in anything. Matty never picks anyone. He never remembers.
I just thought up two in the last 3 seconds. So
Perfect.
Joke's on you, Will.
So I always think of him when I'm on the show. But I'm going to move to Matty and ask the same question.
Mm-hmm.
Who do you see as the most pro-gun in the field?
I guess on the right, obviously, it's Rand Paul. On the left, Bernie Sanders is actually surprisingly pro-gun from the statements I've seen so far. Maybe there's some anti-gun statements I haven't seen, but I mean, it would make sense that he's pro-gun because in Vermont, they have very lax gun laws, and I think, like the UK, they had like less than 10 gun homicides in the entire state in most years. So
I think you guys are leaving out a critical candidate, which is Ted Cruz, who in 2003, in the case Heller, I forgot, was it Heller versus, I can't remember what state it was. But, I'm sorry?
It was Heller versus D.C.
D.C., yes. And he really defended the Second Amendment quite well. He's also a good candidate in that respect. I wanted to move on to, it's fine, we have about 6 minutes left. I wanted to move on to, we talked about who the candidates are. I wanted to move on to our winners and losers segment, and I am going to start with Matt Palumbo this time.
Yes.
He can get us started off. Who are your winners and losers of the week, and why?
Winner is, I guess, Ben Carson, who's actually now tied for first with Trump in the polls. So good for him. Loser, Chris Cantwell, because he's an easy target, and I know you probably saw his post about Josie.
Yeah, I did. He's an nincompoop. Yeah, Matty just froze
yeah, but he said everything he needed to say.
He did. The one time he actually had winners and losers. Kevin, I'm going to go to you. Go ahead.
All right, loser is, I'd say, Black Lives Matter, that whole movement.
Good one, yeah.
I think they're still coming off that embarrassment they had with one of their organizers being outed as white, and but then on the heels of that, you have this wave of murders of police around the nation now that is starting to shift even the mainstream narrative or the mainstream media to look at some of the insightful, some of the hate speech really that's coming out of some of these Black Lives Matter rally and so forth. I think the winner this week is, I'm not sure if it's a winner, but China is about to do something that coming up with the 70th anniversary of the end of World War II. Supposedly they're going to finally publicly reveal this anti-carrier missile that they have, which is this hypersonic ballistic missile that is supposed to change 50. It's supposed to basically throw a wrench into 50 years of American strategy in the Pacific, and it might make any sort of carrier defense of Taiwan impossible at this point. So I think they're about to really upend strategy in the Pacific with this new missile.
I think that's happening in the Pacific, and I think you see in the Middle East, and you see in certainly in the West that Russia's advancement, their antagonistic tendencies. I don't think it's a coincidence that both China and Russia are doing this at the same time, and this is more testament to the feckless foreign policy of this dim-witted, half-wit president that we have. And I could go on all day about it, and it's really sad. Okay, that pissed me off.
I can't believe you voted for him both times.
Yeah, I know. I just was so he was just so charismatic. Listen, if I hear another person say this guy's charismatic, I'm gonna lose. He is not. I've never known him to have any charisma. He's been a stumbling, bumbling idiot the entire time. There is no charisma. I've never seen it. Give me a break. Okay, Kevin H. Your winners and losers.
For my winner, I guess I'll pick Carly Fiorina. She did really well in a happy hour debate at Fox News, and CNN just revised their rules for getting into the top-tier candidates for the upcoming debate, so she will likely be in a top-tier debate. So that'll be good to see her debating Trump and some of the others, because I think she'll do well, even if I don't necessarily support all of her platform. Loser, I'm going to have to pick Matt Palumbo for liking Bernie Sanders' stance on guns. Clearly, he hasn't heard Bernie's defense of his failing NRA record and the restatement of his belief that the Second Amendment is only for hunting. We shouldn't have any guns that aren't used for hunting, and therefore well, this is my editorialization, but all self-defense handguns will be banned.
Isn't though, to be honest, and as a leftist that I am, aren't guns only for militias?
No, there are protection guns too.
It says militia. Anyway.
No, muskets are for the militia.
Yeah. Yeah. So when the framers wrote it, they meant muskets. So that's all right. You can have. Okay, as a one-shot round ball musket.
Yeah. They also said we couldn't post to Twitter.
Oh, they did?
That's right there in the First Amendment.
How'd they know that? I don't know. I'm going to question that one, actually, Kevin H. I'm going to look that up. Those are some good winners and losers. My winners and losers, I have a winner, and it's Donald Trump, who is just clobbering people. Clobbering. I'm not saying I like Donald Trump. I'm not saying I like his policies. I am saying that the guy he has a very prudent, smart strategy, and I like what he does to the media. I like what he did to that half-wit Jorge Ramos, these fake journalists. I like what he did to Karl Rove. I am sick of Karl Rove. I like that he called out Fox News for their establishment bias. And my loser of the week is Rand Paul. Here's a guy that attacks Trump supporters, who is attacking supporters that he could have gained, is positioning himself as an outsider. I don't know who this guy has advising him, but I'm a third-rate, two-bit, second-year political science student, and I know more than whoever his campaign manager is. What the hell were you thinking? He's not even going to make it into this next debate. He really isn't, and that's going to hurt him, and it pisses me off. So I don't know where he got off thinking in that first debate to attack Trump like that. That was a bad idea. Cruz has stayed prudent and has not bashed Trump, and he's in third place in most polls. Here he is. He's maintaining. If Rand Paul can't maintain these next few months or next few weeks, he's going to be in big trouble.
What do you think about how Bush did this week? Because Bush sort of came out and had a little bit of a...
He did.
Yeah, I didn't think he came off as bad as Rand Paul did.
No, he didn't, but he looks foolish. But you're right. And moreover, George Bush isn't going to get a lot of those supporters. Those people don't like they don't like Jeb Bush. And you could say, yes, that there are a lot of people that are bashing Trump supporters, that, they're not conservatives, they're not this and that, but people are just looking, the guy is connecting with people. I don't think a lot of them care what he did 10 years ago, or what he said on Oprah's show in 1988, or what he said about guns, or what he said about Hillary Clinton. I mean, you can look at it and say, here's a business. Everyone's going to hate me for this, but I'm just looking at it objectively. I don't, you know what I mean? Necessarily, Trump is not my candidate. I don't know who my candidate is. But what I'm saying is that he was a prudent businessman, and yes, he supported Hillary Clinton. She was a politician in New York. I mean, this is what the guy did. Yeah, he used eminent domain. Self-interest would dictate so. I would have more of a problem if he was using it as a politician. You know what I mean? I don't know if anybody pursuing their individual self-interest necessarily bothers me, though I'm not defending that.
Can I change my loser of the week to Will Ricardella?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, you're just an idiot, seriously. I mean, Trump needs to go away and fast. He's the fakest. He's not conservative in the least. How is he gonna? I mean, if he gets elected, people are they're gonna get blindsided, just like a lot of people on the left were blindsided by Obama. I think a lot of people on the right are gonna get blindsided by Trump.
That could be entirely possible. But in the same rate, you could say maybe not. I mean, here's a guy that has adapted to the market his entire life. This guy knows how to adapt. I don't think he's politically entrenched in anything that could work in his favor.
As a corporatist, he knows how to adapt.
Yeah, well, a corporatist how? I mean, I think only corporatists exist in government. I mean, it's really hard to fault a business for pursuing their own self-interest. Again, I mean, you know, if the government is going to open up these avenues, it's really the businessman. It's in their best interest to you know, exploit those policies. I mean, rent seeking is what they're supposed to do, is get an advantage over their competitors.
So do you trust him to tear down these policies, or trust him to put up?
I don't trust him at all. I am just telling you his strategy here.
Politically savvy. Okay, I get you.
Oh, not even politically savvy. I think the thing is he's not politically savvy, and I think that's what people are looking for.
That makes him politically savvy, because that's what people are looking for.
Wow, I mean, my head's going to explode here.
That was meta.
You know, that was, but you know, I think, and you know what? Who else is a win? I mean, and also Donald Trump for sticking up for Fiorina and saying she should be at the CNN debate. And I don't know what you guys think, but the GOP has just been like, what, you know, with these debates, you should really dictate, not CNN or Fox News, who gets on the stage and who debates. I mean, this is the Republican Party. This is, you know, if you're as a member of a Republican Party, which I am in California, it's our debate, not CNN's or Fox News's. This isn't meant to be a spectacle. It's meant for these people to debate their ideas and find out more about these candidates. And for some reason, they're letting CNN run the show. You know, I mean, how dangerous is that? What do you think about that, Kevin H?
It's probably all negotiated well enough on both sides.
I think it's just that the GOP establishment doesn't want to come off as supporting one, or they don't want to make these decisions themselves, so they pass it on to CNN or Fox News. You know?
Maybe. You know, on the topic of the day, though, I think someone's going to benefit by bringing up the Second Amendment a lot more, you know, because it really hasn't been that much of an issue. And there's such a diehard and grassroots movement that somebody's going to get somebody has to do a little bit better job of communicating this, you know?
I mean,
they're not the silent majority. These people are very vocal.
It's funny because another positive that I forgot of Donald Trump, he's just clobbering Jeb Bush at this point. I mean, clobbering him with ads, and I mean really hard-hitting ads, and he's really harming Jeb Bush right now, and I like to see that. I don't think Donald Trump's going to get the nomination any way you slice it, okay? But I just think that it's good that he's out there tearing some of these establishment guys down. I see that as a good thing. I think Rand Paul, if he would have played his cards better, could have risen out of these ashes here. I think Ted Cruz might, and I think Ben Carson, who also could have been a winner, who's tied with Trump in Iowa. I mean, what do you, as a libertarian, Kevin H., what do you think of that? What do you think of Ben Carson?
I think he's pretty decent, but he doesn't have the political savvy that a lot of I think is needed in the office, and unfortunately that's playing out. But maybe to your point earlier, the lack of political savvy, maybe that's really resonating with people, and that's why he's rising in the polls.
This is definitely the summer of the Beltway outsider. There's just no way look at the outsiders and how they're benefiting right now. There's just no way that people are tired of lies and deceit. They really are. How many times have you?
Climate, is there any chance for a Hillary Clinton? I mean, she is the.
No. Is there any chance for Jeb Bush? No. But look, I don't know. Look at Hillary Clinton. Look at the Democrat Party is a monolithic voting bloc. It's party over country. This is what they do. They don't care. It's like, yes, we want Hillary Clinton in there. I don't understand why the people think that there's a difference between Bernie Sanders' economic policies and Hillary Clinton's. I always like that when people are like, "Oh yeah, Barack Obama, he's not a socialist." Of course he is. What are you kidding me? At best he's a fascist. So I don't understand what these people are talking about. Kevin, would you agree with that?
Well, didn't you say on another episode that socialism means fascism now? So.
Well, yeah, because socialism in its purest sense means that the government ownership of resources. Fascism, I think it was Peter Drucker that said, fascism is a stage reached after socialism becomes a fantasy. You know what I mean? People are, well, let's give them the illusion that they own this property and that they get to keep the fruits of their labor, but we will control it through confiscatory tax rates and regulatory policies. So, people have this illusion. It's almost like feudalism in a sense. Actually, not as explicit as feudalism, but it's people are working and thinking, hell, I'm getting ahead here, and meanwhile, government's still controlling the allocation of the resources through perverting prices, subsidies, taxes, regulatory policies, barriers to entry, barriers to exit. And we see that a lot now. I mean, it's corporatism, and that's what we have here. And look, it's not unique to Barack Obama. It's the Republican Party too. The Chamber of Commerce is built on a foundation of corporatism. So, and they're a huge party donor. Would you agree with that, Kevin?
Yes.
Okay. I just hope I'm not going crazy here.
No, you're not. You're making. I mean, we've talked about this before. It's government itself needs to be reformed in a way that I don't think government is ever going to want to do, because the people in power, and maybe to a certain extent, Trump is the type of guy who would, because he's a billionaire, who would actually be able to say, you know what, I'm going to change things in Washington. I just can't believe it. Some of his policies are just very ignorant. I mean, some of the things he espouses.
I wish that a lot of these people would, instead of bashing Trump, which is easy to do, looked at his strategy a little bit. Just you don't have to take Trump's entire strategy. You just look at it a little bit and say, geez, he got this right, he got that right. Why don't I model my campaign a little bit after that? I mean, look, you've seen Ted Cruz, instead of attacking Trump, is attacking media personalities, people that are asking these gotcha questions. He's going after him. He's getting media play for it. So I think to some degree, and Rand Paul was doing that actually for a little while until he just went off track and started attacking Trump and his supporters. You know what I mean? So I don't know. I think that Rand Paul can turn his campaign around, but there's a lot of time left. But he really needs to change up that strategy. Just don't even acknowledge Trump.
He's a good general. He could actually do well against Hillary, but he'd never get past the primaries.
Why? I think he can.
How?
Because
he's too far left on issues that the debate. Yes, sure he is.
No, I don't think
on
so.
Certain issues, he is. But those are the issues that bring people out to the polls.
I am a conservative for all intents and purposes. I don't see Rand Paul as having a left policy on foreign policy myself. I think the guy follows a Reagan strategy. I don't think Reagan was a more warmonger. I think he had quite, to a degree, I think, he wanted to stay out of overseas things, and his way to do that was to have a stronger military, was to show strength. And I think Rand Paul understands that. I like his ideas of defunding Hamas and getting and not subsidizing our enemies anymore. I like those ideas. It's just, I think the ideas really need to get out there. He did an interview with Bret Baier a couple of months ago where he really outlined his foreign policy, and it was excellent. I thought I liked it. I don't know. Did anyone else see that, Kevin?
I saw that.
Yeah, you saw it. Kevin H., did you see it?
No, I missed it.
If you get a chance, watch it. There's nothing suspect in his foreign policy to me. You know what I mean? I didn't see anything I didn't like. I liked everything that he said. So.
Well, if you believe that he's telling you how he actually feels.
Yeah, I believe. I have no reason not to. So, I mean, I guess until I wouldn't.
More so than some of the other candidates.
Yeah. I would trust. The only thing I didn't like about Rand Paul was when he, and I get it, it's a political move, is when he went on the stump for Mitch McConnell. And I know they're from the same state, but Mitch McConnell is just terrible, and that really bothered me. And that kind of positioned Rand Paul more with the establishment, whereas Cruz is always kind of taking the step away from the establishment. And I think that's why he's performing better with largely the same amount of media coverage. Would you agree with that, Kevin Ryan?
Yeah, but I also think that I don't think either of them really are beholden as much to the establishment as the other candidates. So, I think you might be nitpicking a little bit with Rand on the McConnell thing, but
yeah.
I think he generally is. If you look at the overall situation, if he wasn't a senator, he'd be doing a lot better. Put it that way.
Okay, and I'll end on this. Kevin H. Who do you see as emerging, if you had to pick, as the candidate? And I mean, it could be as outlandish as anything, but who do you see coming out as the candidate in the future?
I don't know. It kind of depends on the next debate. I think the next debate will really shake out a lot of the stragglers.
Okay, good call. Kevin,
The 16th, by the way, right? It's coming up?
Yeah, same day Wayne Allen Root's on the show.
Oh, that's right.
Go ahead, Kevin.
Who do I see winning, or who do I want to win?
Who do you see winning? If you had to pick one, let's get you on the record.
It's so hard. I mean, like other Kevin said, this next couple of debates. I mean, I feel like everyone's waiting for the next debate because they liked the first one, and so they're dying for the next one. I mean, I have it marked on my calendar, but somebody's got to start dropping out. Somebody said Lindsey Graham's going to be the first to drop out.
I think Rick Perry is.
Getting people, yeah, here's another one. Getting people to start dropping out so that we can start focusing on a few candidates rather than, this massive amount of candidates is at least going to make things easier. I still don't rule out Bush because he's got that war chest, and I think he's got to start.
I hate that guy the most. I hate him more than I hate Donald Trump.
Yeah, again, you said who I think is gonna do well. I don't think Bush is going to get the nomination, but it's just his money is huge.
Okay, I would have to say I'm going to go crazy here and say Marco Rubio. I think I could see that happening, and I can also see Ted Cruz emerging and happening too.
What about Carson? I mean, Carson's quietly got up there.
No, I know, but not about his political savviness. I just think that. I mean, we saw this with Herman Cain, that people were into Herman Cain for a while. You're going to see a lot of shifts like we did in 2012. People move from one or another, certainly the conservative base. And for Donald Trump to have a lead at this early should be, in some intents and purposes, a little bit concerning. I think you saw in the last, any time, I think, in any election, the person, who was it, that Howard Dean in 2004? And then Dick Gephardt was the person that was behind him at this time of the race. So it's just so early, really, to talk about. But if I could see something in the future, I could see a Rubio, I could see a Cruz. I could see either one of those guys, actually. I think they would just make a good... Not that I think that people would see them as good national candidates for different reasons. But call me crazy.
Crazy.
So I just want to say thank you to Kevin Holian. Can you say it? I'm sorry, I can't do it right now.
Holian Borgness.
Holian Borgness. Sorry, I can't read my own writing either. Thanks for coming on. The show will be archived to YouTube, Kevin, so you can post this anytime. It'll be on the Liberty.me station. Kevin, we have a lineup. I think next week on Thursday we have the show on Thursday night instead, and it's with Tom Woods. And then the week after we have Wayne Allen Root. And I think that'll be before the debates. And if that's a conflict, we can maybe do it after, the next day. I don't know. And then after that, we have, I don't know who we have. Do you know who we have on that week after that?
Oh, yeah, I think somebody just posted one. Didn't you just put one up there?
I put one up for the 30th. Adam Friedman, who wrote The Naked Constitution and A Less Perfect Union, a couple of very good books. I don't, if you... Kevin, if you want to, that's a great book to get, and A Less Perfect Union, Delineating States' Rights. I mean, the guy is a great writer, and he makes it less wonky and uncomplicated. So, just recommending that to everyone. So, thanks for showing up. Thanks for watching it again, and follow Unbiased America, the Analytical Conservative. We Are Capitalists, which came out with a great video on gun laws. You can check that out.
Going viral, by the way.
Gone viral.
Yeah.
Jason Hubbard does a great job with that. He also calls me and sends me nudes. It gets weird. So thanks for showing up, and have a good day. We'll see you next week.
Thanks, Kevin.
Thank you,
Thank
Kevin.
you.